Good afternoon. Welcome to the Silvers Connection. I am back again with Dr. Connie McReynolds. Today we are talking about something that's fascinating to all of us, I believe, has to do with repopulating college campus and going back to school after being virtual for over a year and shut down, not having that activity and being excited maybe to go back, maybe a little apprehensive to go back to campus. And how's that all going to work out? Today we're going to talk about some of those things and help develop maybe some thought processes, some coping mechanisms, just at least alert you to some of the things you may be facing. So Dr. Connie McReynolds, welcome back to the Silvers Connection.
Thank you for having me back. It's an honor to be here.
You should become a regular because I love talking about this stuff. And anybody smarter than me, which is most of my guests, I love having them back because you can just talk. So students are coming back, faculty are coming back, staff are coming back. There is some concern. Talk about that a little bit. What are we looking at?
Well, there really is. And again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back on your show, the Silvers Connection here, and chatting it up a little bit about kind of what this is, what we're looking at, concerns, and hopefully some strategies to be able to look at this, because we know that social isolation has been real for a lot of people for the past year and a half. And, what is it like as people start to reintegrate into places that, for their first year students and second year students, let's just realize that all of last year's students who were new to campus were never on campus. And now we have a whole new batch of folks coming in who've never been on campus. So we really have 2 years, kind of 2 cohorts worth of students who have never been on the campus, most likely.
I haven't thought of that way, but you're right. I know some staff that they were hired at the beginning and they never saw their office. I didn't consider the students because we were doing the virtual thing, but they've perhaps not been on campus before either. So this is...
You've got a lot of new coming in.
So there are a lot of emotions that are involved here with coming back. Of course, we've got the pandemic. It's on, it's off. We're masked, we're not masked. We've got lots of crazy things going on. How does that impact us as human beings? Impact it a little bit.
Oh my gosh, there can be multiple impacts. Let's just put it that way, because there are some people for whom uncertainty and just day-to-day life, they just kind of trudge through it. They do okay, and they're not really affected by it. We can see people like that all the time.
Right.
They just, it's like water off a duck's back. They just seem to be able to, move through things gracefully and easily and really no complaints and do okay. If we could all be like that, but we're not. Most of us have some type of reaction to uncertainty, to stressors, to situations, particularly when we think about prolonged exposure to something. So what I think we're looking at in a lot of these cases for the past 18 months, we could have people that are coming in with a traumatic experience from this. And they literally could be in a category of what could be called kind of a complex trauma. I don't really like the label because complex tends to suggest there's a simple trauma, and there really isn't.
Any trauma is simple as long as it's not mine, right? It's like surgery.
Right. So any medical procedure,
right.
But trauma is really trauma. Anxiety is anxiety. These things do fall on something of a spectrum, you could say. So you might have from mild to severe. And you can have people that actually move up and down that spectrum, depending upon if there's a trigger of some sort, if there's something that they find more upsetting, if they come into a classroom and, sometimes smells trigger people, sometimes visual cueing can trigger, sometimes auditory. And so people sometimes don't know why they get triggered. They just know all of a sudden they don't want to be in that room.
Okay, so this is a great segue into our lizard brain or the limbic system, right? Emotions, fight, flight, freeze. So let's stop there and let's talk about that. What is the amygdala? What does it do? Help us understand that. And remember, we're all laymen here, so keep it simple, Connie. Keep it simple.
Well, here's the simple part. The easy way to think about this is we have a survival system in our brain that's hardwired
Mhm.
for survival. And that is the primary functioning aspect of our brain when we get scared, when we're frightened of something, when we get triggered on something. That is the survival part of the brain, sometimes referred to as the reptilian part of the brain.
Okay.
It's not that we have a reptile brain. I don't mean that. And then there's no disparaging, comment about reptiles here either.
Right.
So it's just kind of a euphemism of sorts about our brain, because it's
Right.
considered the oldest part of our brain because it is that survival center.
Mhm.
And that amygdala system, the limbic system, is designed to go into functioning, or to come online, if you will,
Mhm.
whenever something frightens me or something frightens us.
Mhm.
Because it's the alert system, it's the early warning system, you could call it that. This is the early warning system in our environment. There's something dangerous and we need to pay attention so that we're not harmed.
Okay.
And so when that is functioning, the challenging part is that there's another part of our brain that's operating, that needs to be operating. And that's the frontal lobe part, sometimes called the prefrontal cortex. We won't go too far into that, but let's just
Right.
say front brain, center midbrain. So the front part of our brain, you can think above our eyebrows, behind our eyes kind of area.
Mhm.
This is what we call the executive functioning part of the brain. And this is our rational thinking. This is where we can make decisions. This is where we can weigh evidence. This is where we can make choices.
Mhm.
One or the other is in operation.
Well, the amygdala is functioning 200 miles an hour all the time, is it not? I mean, I exaggerate only slightly for this demonstration, but it's always. I teach that if your lizard brain had its way, you would be in a dark room in the fetal position, lights out, sucking your thumb, completely safe, because it's frightened of everything, and it works all the time. Is that fair, or do I overstate?
Yes, it does. It's just, is it in a vigilant state?
Okay,
Because
okay, there's a better description for it. See, I knew, that's why I bring you on. You put it in the proper terms.
well, there's vigilant
Uh,
and there's hypervigilant,
yes.
and then there's relaxed state. And so typically as we go through our day, we really want to train that part of our brain, and we can train this. We can
Okay.
learn how to manage that part of our brain. Our brains are completely trainable.
Okay.
We are all trainable.
Okay. Good to
So
know. I'll let my wife know. Now, is it a matter of we can be aware of the state and then rationalize the situation and calm it down? Is it like that?
there is some to that. Yes,
Okay.
there's something very much to that,
Okay.
which is when we are in a traumatized state, though, that part of the brain actually gets bigger. So our amygdala system, the more we use something, the stronger it gets. So let's just always remember that repetition is what builds our neuronal pathways.
Okay.
And so if I'm a child and I've had exposure to adverse events in my childhood and repeatedly, that part is going to be bigger because
Okay.
it's getting used more often. If I'm raised in a family that's calm and provides guidance and explains things, then I'm developing more of the frontal part of my brain, the prefrontal, the cortex part, the thinking part.
Mhm.
And so what happens then is we end up getting hardwired out of childhood into which camp do we tend to fall in?
Mhm.
Kind of that reactionary camp or the thoughtful, mindful camp. And so as we get older, we tend to just continue repeating those patterns until we kind of learn that maybe there could be a better way for us to go through our life. Maybe we've had enough hard knocks. Maybe we've had enough rough situations. Maybe we just want to change. Maybe we're sick and tired of having this kind of constant chaos going on in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so absolutely it's possible. That's what we do with the neurofeedback, is we literally help people rewire that part of their brain
Mm-hmm.
to help it calm down. Not everyone needs neurofeedback. We tend to work with people who are a little farther on the spectrum with anxiety, depression, trauma, and the like, because at some point you kind of get to a tipping point where it's pretty hard to gain control over that. And that's a little bit of my concern about the repopulation as we kind of wrap back to that conversation, which is we could have a lot of people, teachers, staff, and students, who fall in that category of having an overly trained amygdala system,
Mm-hmm.
and sensitive, in other words. So there's greater sensitivity to the stressors that they may start encountering, which is everything new. I mean, we come back, we've got, you know, those of us who've been there, we haven't sat in our chairs at our desks for a year and a half. We haven't done any of this. Those of us who have the history of being there. Now we're bringing, you know, all these people back on campus. We have, you know, some concerns about how that might come together. How are people going to repopulate when we still have some concerns out there
Mm-hmm.
about, you know, kind of, and again, I tend to not fall on either side of a political debate about this, because I think that's an error in our thinking. I'm not going to go any further than that, other than I think we need to be in the middle of the road on this.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to think, we need to think our way through this, and we need to be able to help people find ways of building resilience as we come back.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that sense of building resilience, people are going to get very overwhelmed. I've spoken to some people who've come back on campus and they are uneasy. They're feeling just kind of disoriented being there. They're not comfortable in their offices yet. And it's a lot to contend with.
Okay, so let me hold John right there. So their amygdala may be in a bit of a hypervigilant state coming back because of all the uncertainty. Now there are things that trigger your amygdala. Talk about that a little bit. What kind of triggers do we have?
Well, it can be a lot of things. So everyone, remember, is unique. And so if someone came through some adverse childhood experiences,
okay,
they could be kind of pre-programmed and not even be aware that there could be something like a quick movement in a room. It catches you out of the corner of your eye.
right.
And there's, you know, it's a jolt because we're not used to being around other people who are moving around a room. There could be someone making a loud noise, and maybe there was a lot of uncertainty and noise in this child's early life that was unpredictable. And so even scooting a chair sometimes, you know, can just catch someone off guard. They don't, maybe something happened in their life where that was an early warning sign of something coming at them. This is hardwired in. And so there's just, and I don't want to, you know, kind of present doom and gloom here, but it's more just how can we reintegrate and be thoughtful in how we're doing this? How can we be mindful that there are going to be people struggling with this when they come back on campus, and they're not going to necessarily be able to say, hey, I've got a problem over here.
Yeah, they won't really recognize it that way, will they?
No.
Okay, so our senses can trigger sight, sound, touch, taste, feel. Our senses are all doing that. They're sensing, and the amygdala fires off of that. So let's talk about ourselves. So we're going to have these feelings. I don't feel comfortable in my office. It's like, well, that's kind of weird when I say it, but that could be true. So what should we do if we find ourselves feeling out of place?
Well, and I honestly think a lot of people are going to be experiencing this, quite frankly.
I hope you are wrong, but I agree.
I do. I think it's going to feel very odd to people. It's going to feel unusual. Our visual cueing has been changed for 18 months.
Yes.
Our visual cueing is not the same. And so visual is very important to us for scanning our world, keeping ourselves safe. And now we're back into this environment, which hopefully the long-term memories will start coming back, but we still have things that are out of the ordinary, such as masks. It's an out of the ordinary experience. We don't have people wearing masks on campus experience. And so looking at this is a visual cue of something's off. That's telling our brains that, oh, there's something unusual here. This doesn't fit my memory at all. I'm not used to seeing people wearing a mask walking down a hallway. You know, that in the past would have been some kind of
Joke.
really big early warning sign.
Some kind of a joke. So the other thing about masks, I think, and let me test this out on you, help me with this. I think that with the mask on, where we as people take a lot of cues, social cues from your face and how your face responds. We smile, that settles us down, makes us feel good. With the mask, we lose our ability to size up this person. What's the mood? And remember, you know, can I trust you? Do I like you? That sort of thinking. We don't have that now. We just have eyes.
Exactly. And it is shocking when we think about 18 months worth of babies being born into this world who out in public have not seen other faces. They've not seen smiling faces at them. We have little children, you know, who don't recall what it was like pre-mask when they're out in public.
It sounds like a bad Freud experience.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about, really, with what we've been through.
Right.
And I don't know that we're really giving it its due at some level, not to be the doom and gloom, but really, how do we build hope? How do we build resilience? How do we guide people through what's going to be a challenging situation? And again, the people that I've had conversations with who were the early repopulators, there's discomfort there.
So we are emotional creatures. We experience emotions first, and then our frontal cortex grabs it and says, settle down. It was just a this or that. But so we're going to have to be aware ourselves of what we're experiencing and trying to rationalize all these new experiences that we have.
We are, because it's still uncertain. We have so much uncertainty with this. And the general person doesn't necessarily do well with a lot of uncertainty. You know, a lot of people would rather just be told, you know, X, Y, and Z. And yeah, you know, you kind of get that, you kind of don't, because it's a fluid situation. It's just absolutely fluid. And one thing one day, the next thing the next day. And we just kind of emotionally are getting pulled back and forth, depending upon, again, what you watch, what you listen to, which, you know me, I'm saying cut it all off. Is stay away from the stuff, because it's hard to get the truth out there. I don't speak to either side of the political parties in this. I'm saying both sides have their pluses and both sides have their minuses.
Yeah. I believe you and I, in our last conversation, you talked about how, especially for younger people, and I think a lot of folks really, every time they see something on TV or hear something on TV, their brain logs it as if it was the first time or it's another time. So this stuff, even though it's the same story, perhaps, it keeps stacking, which intensifies the drama and the trauma and the, oh my goodness, effect.
We learned that certainly with 9/11. You know, as I think I'd mentioned in that other program, child psychologists started coming out and telling parents, turn this off. Don't keep playing these incidences of the planes hitting the buildings, because the children think it's a new incident every time they see it. And I think I also waxed a little bit into the fact that our brain records everything. And so we just need to really be aware that everything that we are encountering, our brain is storing it.
It's a little like Google, nothing goes away, huh?
Nothing goes away.
Oh no.
It's all in there.
So we need to be aware of what we're feeling. We need to, what about others? How should we consider others? Because I don't know what you're feeling. You don't know what I'm feeling. we need to be considerate of others. How should we deal with other folks who may be experiencing this differently than us?
Well, I think that's a wonderful question because, I catch myself sometimes because I don't agree with everything that's out there. I don't know anybody who does. So, occasionally I'll see something and, there might be a interesting post on someone's LinkedIn or whatever of a situation. You just go, gosh, really? Because all of us are going to have things that we react to. All of us, are challenged in certain ways. And I think if we can, at best, stay away from political debate, stay away from just those kind of lightning rod topics. And, the approach I'm taking with all of this at this point is, I believe everyone has the freedom of choice on
Yes.
how they should go through their life. I do think I still live in a country that values that, and I value it. And so if I value choice for myself, I really have to value choice for everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And the same with emotions. I may have emotions to some things, and others may have different kinds of emotions. And if we can literally pull back the reactionary part of our brain, that part that says, oh, look at that or whatever, and say, that's someone's right to choose whatever that is. They have the right to do this. And if we use, and sometimes it's an overworked word, but compassion and empathy. If we can still, really remind ourselves that we don't know what that other person's life is. We cannot know what they've gone through in the last 18 months. We cannot know what their life has been like prior to the 18 months ago.
Right.
There's no way we can know any of this about anyone unless they're a very close friend. And even then, our friends don't typically tell us everything they went through. They may say, I kind of don't want to do that. It doesn't feel good, kind of thing, maybe what you get. But when we're dealing with colleagues, first of all, we're in a work environment. We don't have any right to ask those questions. This is work. It's not personal stuff that we tend to get into, but we have to understand there is personal stuff at work. And so
folks are going to bring it with them.
It walks in the door.
It walks in the door, and there's that old adage of when you come to work, leave your home life at home and bring your like that. That's not true. That's a bit of that's a myth. That's
it is
not good. People are going to be showing up. They're going to have their emotions out at varying levels. Not our place to judge. Right? Keep your opinions to yourself.
Yes, and allow people to be who they need to be.
Yeah.
Because what we don't need is people kind of getting like the when I use the mask police or whatever, but there's a little bit of that. I mean, everyone is going to have some level typically of anxiety or fear or something.
Right.
And if we can realize that's our stuff, it's our stuff. This is my reaction to this. And if I would look at what my reaction is to whatever the situation is in the external, and I do the work inside on me, I don't need to try and change the external environment necessarily. In other words, I don't need to change someone else. If I change me and what this means to me.
Yeah, because we're only responsible for ourselves, but somehow, what is it about us as humans? We feel the need to fix you. Let me fix you.
Well, because it's easier to point the finger. And so
I'm perfect. Let me fix you.
Yeah, well, I heard this years and years and years ago. It's a little corny, but it's like whenever you point one finger at someone else, just remember you've got three pointing back at yourself. So, 3 times look at me and 1 time look at you.
Let's talk about the classroom for a second now. Going back to the classroom for the first time, I'll be teaching a couple of classes. We show up the first day. There's always a little anxiety. Everybody's a little stressy. Who's the new professor? It looks like he's scary, that sort of stuff. And that's just the normal stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this first time back, face to face, folks are going to be a little bit elevated.
They're going to be, some people are going to be a lot elevated.
How, let's look at this from a couple perspectives. from the student perspective, what should the approach be, do you think?
So if I'm a student
If
walking
you're a
into,
student, yeah, or you're with other students, you're talking with other students, you're in a classroom, what should my approach be as a student?
what I would really encourage people is to stay away from the negativity talk.
Yeah,
Because again, remember, our brain records everything. And remember, we've got that negativity bias going on inside our brain.
okay,
We've got that amygdala system running, and it's always on. That algorithm's always running, looking for something negative, and that's the fear factor that gets triggered. So if I can go into a classroom and maintain as much as possible kind of my centered approach and not get
Sure.
drawn into all these conversations that people are going to have,
stay
because
neutral.
you know, there's just, you either adding to the positive or you're adding to the negative. And the bottom line is, it's affecting you.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, this is our choice of what we want to do, how we want to focus. The energy that we want to create within ourselves is really what it boils down to. And it's sometimes very attractive, because here's the other thing that I think is going on a little bit, that desire to fit in. To the isolation factor, because we've had such isolation in the last 18 months. I am seeing some very interesting trends in society about how people want to fit in, and they're willing to subject themselves to certain things
Oh,
to fit in, because they want to be able to go do something, or they want to be accepted by a group, or they want to, you know, it's very interesting because people are needing to reconnect.
mhm.
And so what method are they going to use? And are they going to be aware of that innate desire to connect, that they allow themselves to get drawn into conversations just so they can feel connected?
So we all like to be liked,
Mhm.
right? People like to be liked. So you're saying that why do we like to be liked? What is that? There's a little chemical reaction that makes us feel good, right? Being liked, it makes us feel
Mhm.
good, right?
It stimulates some of the neurotransmitters in the brain, which are the
Yeah,
feel-good hormones,
makes us feel
because
good.
if you're connected and you feel comfortable, and you know, we want that. We want people to welcome us.
Mhm.
We want to fit in, you know, we want to be accepted. All of that feels good. To not have that feels like rejection. It feels like, oh, they don't like me. Oh, and then there goes the self-esteem if we're very sensitive to that.
So we like to be liked, and because we so like to be liked, we may allow ourselves to be drawn into or talk about or do stupid things to bolster our need to be liked. Is that what you're telling me?
It's called groupthink.
Oh my gosh, don't do that one. No group thing. All right. So let's go from the professor now. I'm a professor in a class. I've got 28 youngsters in there, and they're freaking out at varying levels. Some of them almost not at all, and some of them are like full tilt boogie.
Yeah.
What should I consider? How should I start my classes?
Well, I think particularly on that first night,
Mhm.
I think instructors should lay off on lecture for a little bit.
They'll like that.
Yeah, I really feel like we need time for reintegration.
Yeah.
And really kind of talking about it. Doesn't have to be a group counseling session or anything
Right.
like that.
We're not able to
But
do that.
right, I think acknowledging that there are going to be different levels of reactions to being back together, because I don't know that many of our students really are going to have that wherewithal, the experience of something like that.
Yeah.
And so by just speaking to it, people who are more higher elevated are acknowledged. Those who are not that elevated are acknowledged, and everything in between. And those that are on the spectrum then realize that people are in different levels than what they might be. So everyone gets acknowledged that way. And I think that helps build a little bit of unity in the classroom and kind of normalizes an abnormal situation.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to realize going back is an abnormal situation. We think that returning to school is getting back to normal. Getting back to school that first night is abnormal now.
You've not attended my class every night is abnormal. Um, you're right, and so there's a conflict in our brain, as we talked about earlier. There were, at least ideally, there were so many positive associations for going to campus, going to college, doing that whole thing, and that's disappeared for the last 18 months. And now perhaps we're looking forward to going back, but when we go back, it's not the same as you suggested. It doesn't match, so the brain's not able to understand what's wrong with this picture, right?
Yeah, and just imagine an instructor now sitting in front of 20 students who are masked.
Yeah.
What is that going to do for interpersonal communication skills?
It's going to change the dynamic of the classroom significantly.
And no one that I'm aware of is thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's going to change the way we feel. It's going to change the way we communicate. It's going to change the way we perceive others. It's going to change the way we feel like we're being perceived. Everything's going to be flipped up on its head.
Everything's going to be flipped on its head. And
Kind of like Alice in Wonderland here, you know?
Well, down the rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is this going to happen all at once in the beginning, or is this something that, hey, maybe the first couple of days, the week or two, everything seemed okay, and then can it come back on us? I mean, we thought we were okay, but then suddenly we're not.
Well, because in the beginning, there could be people who are just very reserved and they're just sitting still in the room. And then it could start building a little bit for them. Some people will be more elevated in the beginning. And then as we start going back into the classroom, particularly for people who are, I think, already familiar with the place. I mean, if they're back in the same classrooms, they're back in the same buildings, they've been there before. So that familiarity can start to come back, even though it's going to be this extremely abnormal process of seeing everyone in masks on campus.
Yeah.
And then there could be people for whom they get back 2 or 3 times and all of a sudden they just get triggered.
Sneaks up.
You know, it sneaks up.
Kind of like a flashback.
Yeah.
Which makes me think of PTSD, and I know nothing about it, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. But does PTSD play a part in this at all, as far as at a very low level? It's not battlefield and so forth, but is that even a factor to use?
It is for some people.
Okay.
And I think we just have to realize this. It is for some people.
Okay.
Because we have students on campus already before COVID who were dealing with PTSD and trauma, and it may not even be diagnosed as that. They may not even know that's what this is that they struggle with, particularly if they came through childhood. It's kind of how it always has been for them. They don't really realize that this can be something that can be treated, it can be identified, it can be helped. So they're just operating, and now they're just in an elevated state. There are some people, though, for which this pandemic has actually created trauma. The isolation, they may have had deaths in the family. There could have been a lot of trauma and drama that's gone on. Because of that, they may have lost a close loved one. You know, it could have been a difficult process. Any number of things could have happened along the way in the last 18 months. You know, and even a very healthy person who, when I say that healthy, I mean someone who didn't come through a trauma family.
Does that person exist?
Well, I'm not sure.
So, hypothetically, I
think there probably are some folks out there that haven't had all this stuff going on. But, you know, I always reference that ACE study, which just tells us a huge portion of the population comes through trauma in childhood. A lot of people, though, build resilience. And so there are some people who have used that in an internal mechanism, have created resilience within themselves. And so they're a little more impervious to kind of the ups and downs and the you know, strange happenings of our world. But there are others who didn't build that resilience, who are sensitive to the world. And we're not going to necessarily know who they are if they don't wear a badge on their, you know, shoulder saying, hey, I'm one of those.
Talk about resilience a little bit. What exactly, when you talk about building resilience, what does that mean exactly? Is it a coping mechanism, or is it legitimate? What is resilience?
Well, I part of my training years ago was really one of the books I read was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was in the concentration camp and he was a psychiatrist. And he survived and wrote this amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
And he actually in his mind was kind of recording the people that made it through versus the ones who became overwhelmed. And he determined that it was a measure of resilience. And then he figured out, can we teach it? That's one of the questions. Can we teach resilience to people? If someone doesn't have it, can we teach it?
Okay.
And the answer is absolutely, because our brain is programmable. It's the best computer on the planet. So if we are consistent about what we're doing, we absolutely can program in resilience for ourselves.
Can you give us a quickie?
Mm-hmm.
A quickie flyby? I mean, we're not going to be experts by the time this is done, but can you just give us what do we do? I mean, hope plays a big part, right? If we have hope, is that
yes? But we can start without it. I mean, as long as you're hungry for something different, is really the key.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So if you are to that point where you are aware, oh, so my lighting just went off here. Is this okay?
Yeah.
It's still okay. I lost my light. There, it's back on. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to California.
Oh, here we go. A little uncertainty there in my world.
There it is. I'm feeling no stress and no stress at all here.
Right. Here's my resilience.
Yeah.
How do I get the light back on?
That's
okay. Right. So really, if there is the desire, kind of this inkling or an awareness that I don't want to live like this anymore, I want something different, how do I get there? That's the key right there. Just ask me, how do I get there? Because now you're going to start searching out things that will support you. And one of the first pieces of this is to realize that as we can get into a mindfulness or an awareness of mindfulness, a relaxation, literally when we are relaxing, our brain grows. And that's what's so cool about this, is when we're practicing relaxation, what we practice grows. And so we literally are creating these new neuronal pathways whenever we're engaging in this. So I can do this when I'm sipping on my cup of tea in the morning.
Okay.
I can practice this. I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to hire a teacher for this necessarily. I can if I want to, but there's plenty that I can do on my own, right in my own home every day to start building this. And the other part of this that I really talk to people about is becoming aware of what you're saying to yourself.
Self-talk.
Because, yes, it's huge. I think I mentioned it the last time. We have somewhere between 75 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And scientists, again, I don't know how they did it, but they figured out that about 77% of those thoughts are negative. And scientists have also figured out that about 70% of our illness is tied to that negative thinking.
Right, because it causes the body to create cortisol.
Stress.
And
yes.
Stress. So, all right, so let me recap a little bit. We have to be aware, and by the way, I'll insert the Silver's flyover emotional intelligence lesson, which is quick questions. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Is that okay? And if it's not okay, change it. So being aware of what we're feeling.
Yeah.
What am I feeling? Why am I feeling? Because we feel things. Now, you mentioned negativity bias, and I'm bouncing backwards a bit, but so the majority of the thoughts that we think in our head are negative. Suggesting negativity bias, is that connected at all, or am I?
Yes, it is, because our brains are wired for that negativity bias. And so that's that algorithm that's running all the time. And if we're not aware of that, and most of us aren't, because who's heard of it, and why do we need to know this?
Because we listen to the Silver's Connection, we are now educated. We now know.
Right. We know there's a pathway out of this.
Yeah.
We can find it.
Since I've given up hope, I feel much better. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good for that. Now, but we can literally work our way out of this. And we can start the process immediately if we become aware of what we're doing. It's just that lack of awareness that, when I'm in a funk and I don't know I'm in a funk, how am I ever going to get out of it? If I don't have the ability to know that I'm doing it.
I'm understood that we're never going to perfect this. So we're not looking for perfection, which is also a negative. We feel sometimes that if we can't be perfect and get it right the first time, that we're a failure. So we can't seek perfection, just progress. And if you catch yourself with the negativity, that's progress, because before you didn't know.
That's exactly right. It's huge. When I'm working with my clients, they come in and they'll say, oh, I had this and this and this. It's like, well, great, you were aware of it. And they go, what? They thought I would get on them. It's like, because they had a negative thought. They thought, oh, she's going to get upset with me. It's like, no. No, this is the whole thing to learn, is that when you become more aware of this, then you can, I just call flipping it.
Yes.
So whatever that negative thing is, figure out what the opposite of that is and say it to yourself. You're not going to believe it to start with, but that's the whole point. You're starting somewhere.
Well, I understand that the brain doesn't know the difference between fact or fiction. So
it doesn't. So
regardless of what you tell it, if you tell it something negative, it'll try to line up until it finds that true. If you tell it something positive in the beginning, it might go, wait a minute, but it'll catch up with you and start looking for and aligning with that positive redirection. Now, does this have to do with the brain? I'm not sure if I'm going to explain this right, but the brain likes the easiest path, kind of like water. It takes the least passive resistance. And so we have so many thoughts and behaviors that are already hardwired in our head. And if we have this negativity bias, then we're automatically just going to go negative, negative, negative. So it's going to be a challenge to get out of that.
It is.
So I shouldn't quit after the first 20 minutes.
Well, you could, but
well, you could.
You could.
Okay, you could. You're not helping me here, Connie.
Well,
a little inspiration.
You've got a free choice here. We're all
don't quit after the first 20 minutes.
Right. You can keep going.
Yeah.
Because again, it's all about the repetition in your brain. What are you programming in your brain? And that's why I say cut the TV, cut the social media, cut that stuff out.
Yeah.
Because if anyone did a real good survey of the stuff that's out there, I'm thinking that our outlets there, 77% negative would be a real positive sign.
Yeah, I think it's probably more than that. So yes, let's stop watching TV. Let's turn off the social feeds because it's Facebook has done the research and has this, and also let this research out that a few minutes on Facebook will decrease your attitude or give you a negative perspective instantly. It happens instantly because it's all negative, and we're always comparing ourselves because everybody's perfect except us, and that's not true.
It's really, really important that people understand what's happening there. And a lot of people are just on it all day long. And then it becomes almost its own problem in there, because we just don't, if we're caught up in that, it's hard to know that there's something else.
Yeah. So let's head this baby home and kind of wrap it up a little bit. So it's going to be different going back, regardless of who you are and what your position is. It's going to be different. And we just need to be aware of that. It's going to be a little messed up. And I'm just going to say this, it's going to be messed up, and that's okay. In that, don't fight it. It's going to be different. It's going to be unique.
It is. It's not going to look the same.
Yeah, and it's not okay. It's not okay, but I mean, it's not something that we can actually control. It's going to be different and unique. So
if we're aware of the fact that we're going to get triggered visually on this, that helps. Because if we know going in, this is going to look really strange to see students with black masks over their mouths in a classroom where this is supposed to be about free speech, free communication. And we've got 18 months of people being acculturated to Zoom, where you sit in a passive environment. And now we're asking people to come back into a live environment and interact. I think there's going to be some folks that were acculturated to just be quiet in a Zoom for 18 months.
Well, these would be the folks that chose, and it didn't take them long to understand that maybe I log in, but I don't turn my camera on, I don't participate, and I don't have to. Well, you put them in a classroom, well, now they can't do that.
Well, not as much, but now we've got everyone masked.
Yeah.
We've got their mouths covered. So
what's
the visual on that?
Okay, stay on topic, Ernie. So, all right, so things are going to be different. We need to be aware of that. Everybody's going to have a different level of feeling about what's going on.
Right.
All right, no need to play superhero. You feel what you feel. No need to judge others. Let's don't do that. Right? Be compassionate. Seek that neutral ground. Don't fix me, please. Right.
Right, and I think really just really giving people the benefit of the doubt right now. If we can work toward really understanding the other person a little bit better, you know, there are going to be people that just hold very different ideas about this. We see that polarization, and I think as instructors and students coming into the classroom, if we can find, it's kind of a mixed bag, because as I think about this, I think, you know, unification, but we don't want group think. And so how do you have critical thinking that we manifest, allowing people to have their differences while respecting the difference? Because we're not trying to find everyone that's going to march in line and say the same thing. We don't want that. That's not what an academic setting is designed to do. We're designed to get discourse going, conversations, and thinking about things from different angles, you know, critical thinking. So it's going to be very interesting to see how students engage in that process and how teachers engage in that process with everyone wearing a mask.
Well, we need to effort to be merchants of hope, right? To the best of our ability. We're not all trained in this, and nor should we attempt or believe that we are. We're all amateurs, except for you, Connie. You've been trained in this, but I can't always call you when I'm in trouble.
Well, you could.
I could.
Well.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Send me a bill. All right. Any closing words on, we talked about resilience. God, there's so much stuff in here. Closing words, we're going to have to close this off. Final words on returning to campus. What are they?
Take it easy.
Take it easy.
Take it easy and take it slow. And just, you know, allow the process to unfold. Just know that it's all going to be different. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. And everyone is in a different state of mind right now. And we can't necessarily know what someone's going through. And so we just give people the benefit of the doubt and try and encourage people.
I think so. I think so. To the best of our ability, again, be merchants of hope, not make fun of or mock. That's not useful. Try to be helpful, try to be encouraging. I think that we can turn some situations positive or more positive than perhaps they might normally be. I think we have to take it upon ourselves to be responsible for at least be responsible for yourself and accountable for your own actions.
Yes, and accepting of others.
Yeah, and accepting of others.
But if we just did that, if we would just accept others that are different from us,
we could solve the world's problems, Connie.
It would be a big step in the right direction.
There it is. We've been on this for 40 minutes and we just solved the world's problems. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. America. We are done here. All right. Well, at that point, then I am going to say thank you so much, Connie, for joining the Silvers Connection one more time. Got to have you back. We just talk. I love this stuff.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's a pleasure.
All righty. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, drop us a line if you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard here at mba@csusb.edu. Ernie Silvers here, host of the Silvers Connection, signing off until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.